All right, we're making great progress with our absolute beginner intro to materials in Unreal Engine. We've made a material from scratch over here by just using some numbers to make our brass material. We've downloaded a Megascans material. We have downloaded textures from an outside website and made our own material, this plate metal material. And now we're going to cover material instances. And there's a lot to go over in this. The good news is that once you set up a really good parent material, you can use it over and over again. It's actually going to take some time to set up this parent material, but once you've got it set up, all the other materials that you want to add in can all be instances, kind of children of that parent material, and it just automatically inherits all of the functionality. So you're not having to make materials from scratch over and over again every time you want to add a new substance to your scene. The other really good reason to use instances is it's a lot more optimized for Unreal. I don't know quite the math behind it, but when you make an instance of it, it only needs to do all the compiling, all the math on the parent material, and all of the clones, all the children are kind of free computationally. So don't ask me how that works, but it does, and it can make a really big scene with a lot of different materials in it much smoother, much more optimized than if each one of those were individual materials. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't have a few unique materials in there. You just don't want to have 50 unique materials in there if you could make instances of that. So what I'm going to show you right now is how to make a parent material for any kind of solid objects, stone, wood, metal, or sand, or whatever, anything that isn't glowing, that doesn't have an alpha channel, invisible parts, that kind of thing. And then for those, you can always make another parent. You don't have to have one ring to rule them all. You can have lots of different parent materials. So maybe you're doing a sci-fi game and you've got lots of things that you want glowing. So you make a parent material specifically for emissive materials. And then anytime you want a glowing computer screen or something like that, you can use that parent to make instances of it. So this isn't to suggest that you only make one of these. But the other thing that's useful too is once you've made one that you really like, you can migrate that asset to any future project. So the work that we do to make this first material, you may never have to do it again. If you make a really good one, you can just keep on passing it on to new projects. So let's open up the content drawer, the content browser, by using the control spacebar like we've been doing. But we're going to be in here a lot today. So what I want us to do is come over here and click on Dock in Layout over here. That's just going to go ahead and just put it down here so that we don't have to constantly be opening it up over and over again. We're going to add a new material here based on our plate material. Since we already have some functionality in the plate material, let's use that. But I want to keep our plate material. I like our plate material. Let's hang on to it. I also want to be able to compare later on. So the first thing I want us to do is to right click on this and just go ahead and make a duplicate. You can of course do Control D to duplicate as well, but we're going to make a duplicate of that material, and we're going to just get a better naming convention here. We're going to do M underscore for material and then prime over here. We're just going to make a prime parent material. Sometimes they're called master materials. There's a lot of different names for these. So right now these are identical. I'm going to take and make an instance of this right away so we can start taking a look at this. Remember, we probably don't want to put our prime material onto objects in our scene. I mean, maybe, you might in some cases. It's not like it's wrong, but we're going to use a lot of placeholders to make very simple textures in here that aren't taking up a lot of room in our file, because what we really want are the instances. So let's make an instance right now. I'm going to right click on the prime material on the main parent material that we've just created, the duplicate material. I'm going to say create material instance. It's going to be a little confusing for a moment here until we get this all sorted out here. So just remember, we're not messing with the plate material right now. We're just not even looking at that. That's what's on this cube over here, but don't mess with the plate material. We're only dealing with our two prime materials. We're just going to name this test for now, just so we can keep it a little clearer in our head. So test is our instance. Notice it says material instance down there at the bottom. So that's what we want to drag and drop onto this cube over here. So right now these are absolutely identical because all three of these are absolutely identical, but we're not going to mess with plate at all. We're going to come back over here to the prime material. But before we do that, we have a little functionality in here already, whether we know it or not. I'm just going to zoom over here to the cube that has the instance on it. Remember, this is the original material. This is the instance that we'll be changing. When I double click on this, we don't get the graph we get over here on my other monitor. We get this material instance editor. So I'm going to just take this and make it a little smaller so we can see what we're doing. We gave a scaling parameter in the previous video over here. So now I can check that little box there to say, hey, I'd like to change the default parameter. I went back and set it to 1. We left it at 3 at the end of that video, so it might say 3 there for you, and that's okay. But I'm going to go ahead and scroll forward or scroll backwards on that there. You can see I can change the scale in real time, and it hasn't done anything. Here, let me make it really extreme. make it huge. It hasn't done anything to prime over here because we made a duplicate of that, right? So we've left this alone entirely. And we can even make another instance of this same material back from the parent here, make another instance of this and just have a different scale. So you can have metal plate that's really small and metal plate that's really big. And it's basically using all of the same other functionality on that. I'm just going to deselect that. And notice when I deselect it, doesn't matter what it says over here. It's reverting back to whatever the parent says. So I set the parent to be 1 on the scale, and that's 1 on the scale because it's only going to change the scale if I check these little boxes on here. So I'm going to close this for now because we're going to come back to that in a little bit. So here's our test material. We want to go back to the prime material, to the parent material. And I'm going to open this up and we're going to swap out some of these. We're going to make these parameters so that we can change them all over. So I'm going to come up to the texture sample, the color sample at the top. I'm going to select it so that it has the orange border around that. And I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to set this to convert to parameter. So node actions, convert to parameter. And when I do that, I need to give it a name. So I'll just call it color. So you can call these anything that you want, anything that makes sense to you. I wouldn't get too fancy with these names because you do want to know what they are later on. So base color, color, you can call it albedo, you can call it whatever you want. So now it's parameter that is set to this material. And we're in the parent material over here. So what I'm going to do is scroll down over here. Remember, we can change textures over here. What I'm going to have us do is search in this, and I'm just going to search for the word placeholder. And we want to go to this placeholder, this beigey one over here, this kind of placeholder beige. I'm going to click on that placeholder beige texture, and by selecting it down over here, it's changed it out here in the parent material. And notice here that it's made our sphere over here a white instead of the rusty material. I'm going to go ahead and save that. And now let's go back to the instance of that. And notice that our instance has been changed as well because the parent has changed. So it took a second to redraw there, but it's passed that white down into the instance. So if I pass that open here, we can see the default color right now here is placeholder. I can go in here and change this and go look for plate. I think it was metal plate. Yeah, there it is. And I can do that. And so now I've just put it right back to what it was a second ago because I've overridden the placeholder color from the parent to be the color of our metal plate. So, and I can switch this to anything else. I can come down over here and let's do dirty, I-R-T-Y, dirty concrete wall. That's the one that's over here on this material, right? So now I've just swapped it out. So I can do this for all of them. And that's what I want us to do right now. I'm going to go back over here to the prime material. I'm just going to close plate right here just so we're not confused. That's just the original material that we made in the previous video. I'm just going to get that out of there so we're not clicking on the wrong thing. And I'll just minimize this guy. So what I want us to do right now is go through, I'm going to pause the video so you don't have to watch me do it over and over again. I'm going to right click on each one of these and I'm going to convert it to a parameter, and then I'm going to name the parameter something that makes sense in that. So I'll pause and do that. So what I've done is I've gone down the column here and I've made each one of these parameters and I've given them a name. It doesn't have to be the identical name, but like I've given it normal map going to the normal channel, whatever. So I'm going to save this. We're not going to see the changes in the child unless we save it. We're going to go back over here to our test and I open that up, and now I have all of these channels available to me. So I can change the scale, but I can also swap out all of these right now. Right now, they're still defaulted back to the metal plate, but we're going to change that as well. So I'm going to close that, go back to the prime material. And what I want us to do now is I'm just going to select metallic, and just so that we're not using a big texture in here in our parent material, there's no reason for that. We can use these tiny little placeholder materials. So I'm going to come down here, scroll if you need to, scroll down in the details panel, and you're finding the channel here. I'm going to search in this for placeholder. And the one that I want to grab for this one, because this is the metal channel, by default, I want it to be black. I don't want there to be any metal. So remember, black is off, right? So we want that to be telling us that there's nothing shiny, no metal parts of our material. Be really careful though. There's one here that's got a little tiny VT on there. That's a virtual texture. That's not going to work for what we're doing right now. We want the one that says black placeholder texture without the little VT there in the corner. So select that one, and we've replaced that metal plate metallic texture that was 1K down to something that I think this is 32 by 32 pixels. So it's tiny. It's just a tiny little black swatch. It doesn't need to be any bigger than that. We're going to do the same thing with roughness, but with roughness, we're going to look for placeholder. And we're going to grab this beigey one. There's one that is a kind of a beigey color that's kind of a halfway between the two of them. Yeah, if you look over at the bottom, toward the bottom it says dimensions 32 by 32. That's nice and small, nice and tidy. So we're going to grab that one for the roughness. And then we're going to come down here to the normal map, do the same thing. There's a normal placeholder. We want to make sure that we're grabbing the second one because it's a little smaller and it's not a virtual texture. So we're going to grab that one, and then we're going to come down here to the ambient occlusion. And this is the trickiest one. You got to be really careful on this one with a placeholder. because the white placeholder over here, the VT that we have up over here is white, so we can't see it down over here on the white on white. So see how I'm hovering over that top one, and it says up at the top there, it says MSVTT. That's the virtual texture, so we don't want that one. And it's disk size 3.9. We want this one down over here that's the disk size 2.9 that does not say the VT at the top. So we want the second one over there. Otherwise, when we go to plug these in, it's not going to let us plug in normal textures into these slots because it's going to be looking for virtual textures. So that's a little bit of a pitfall that you can get into. Now we're going to go ahead and save it. We're going to come back here to this first person map, and then it took a second to update there, you notice, but now what it's done is it now kind of looks like the concrete without any other plate material on there because it's now defaulted back to all of these little placeholders. The only one that it isn't is our color because we had that check down there. And if I go back and make sure that the white has got, oh, this is the placeholder white. You know, let's go ahead and do a little checkerboard on this one just to make it a little easier. So I'll just type in checker, and we'll just try this little noise checker on that. We'll put that one on there just for now. This has got other purposes on that. But the nice thing about this one is it'll allow us to see a little bit better, so it's not just white on white. So if we go back now to our map there, now we're getting that sense of the checker. And the reason why it's important is when we get into the scaling and the rotating, we want something that we can actually see that we're scaling and rotating. So this will do for now. So I think it's a great place to stop on this one. We've made a material instance of our prime material where we can swap out all of these color channels to be anything we want. So we can go back to our online texture source, and I can download the maps for a really terrific kind of terracotta or something like that. And all I need to do is drag those into my texture folder and then just swap them out. Remember, you can also do it this way as well. Oh, and then let's do that. I got to check these boxes first to say I want to use them. So I'm checking the little check boxes there, and let's try that again. I'm going to drag that into the color. I'm going to drag the metal into the metallic. I'm going to grab the DirectX, that's the one I want, into the normal map, and then we've got the ambient occlusion up at the top, and then which one of these is the roughness here? There's roughness over there. And so now, if I look at the instance over here, remember this is the reason why I left this on here. Compare those two side by side, they're exactly identical. This is the clone here, this is the child of the parent material that has the exact same maps that our original prime material did, and they're indistinguishable. So now I can turn this into a dozen different other materials here and get the exact same result as if I had made this from scratch manually each time. So that's really pretty cool. And then the nice thing about this is that it only has to look up the parent material and draw that once, and then all the other ones are free. So we'll come back in the next video over here, and then we're going to add a whole lot more functionality to this. So keep on talking about how to add the, we've got the scaling already, but we're going to do the offset and the rotating and the tinting and all of that. And we're going to make our prime material really powerful.